My name is Roelof Rabe. Thank you to HEFMA for allowing me to speak here today. I know it's the fourth industrial revolution, but I'm going to tell you something different today, so please hear me out and please enjoy. Now let's get this thing to work. Okay, let's go with the arrows there for a moment. I finished my high school career in 1984. Yes, I know it's a long time ago. And I was a true 80s guy. There was even a movie made for my class group or my age group called Class of 84. I don't know which of you can remember that. And I watched the movie Top Gun. I don't know if you remember the old Tom Cruise blockbuster. I watched it so many times that eventually I could pick up the mistakes in their scripts. And even today, 80s music make up more than 90% of my playlists. So I can see some of you have also seen that movie. But the future was lying ahead of me. I was 18 years old, and I wouldn't say the future was predictable, but the future was measurable in a way. And today, a mere 35 years later, can you believe it, that's how long ago I was in school? A mere 35 years later, the future is not only uncertain, but it's immeasurable. And that is what I'm going to talk to you about today. And at the end, I'm going to present a project to you, so I'll go through this as quickly as possible. I know there are time limits. I think I'm going to have to stand here. In one of his latest books, Dan Brown, you all remember him from Da Vinci Code, he wrote the story about a supercomputer geek. I'm sorry for the IT representatives here today, the mighty ITs. And then he built this supercomputer and instructed it. First of all, he fed all known information on history into this computer and instructed it to extrapolate a future, to conclude an answer to the question of where are we going. Now, it is interesting that only us architects can use fiction to base our facts on. And what was quite interesting is that what the computer came up with. So the computer started working and eventually backed out the whole history, showing the various dominant species through the years, millions of years back, through to the dinosaurs, and of course to today where we are the dominant species, Homo sapiens sapiens. Homo sapiens means wise man. Homo sapiens sapiens is a subgroup, modern wise man. It's very wrong, and I don't think that is right anymore. It's not applicable because wise we are certainly not. So I'm going to jump around a bit. So we received a brief from our client to design an academic library of the future. No, it's not any library. It's the library of at Tygerberg campus, medicine and health sciences library. So it was quite an instruction, design a library of the future. And I'm afraid we had no idea what we were doing or how to achieve this. And we had to go to work, and we went on this incredible journey to see try and find out what should a library of the future look like. Now, if you look at these pictures, this is what it used to look like. So it looked pretty easy for us to start off on. I mean, just with a coat of paint, we could have made a huge difference. But it doesn't work like that anymore. Just some more pictures on that. Now, in our research, we started doing some cliche reading, and it became quite clear, and based on all the speeches we listened to in the last few days, that the best thing we can do is get rid of the books. It looked like the right thing to do, and give people some iPads. Go virtual if you have to, even a hologram here and there, and voila, we are future-proof. But unfortunately, that is wrong. So I've received permission to go back 600 million years and take you through history. We're going to discuss each year separately, so I think you're going to sit here for quite a long time. Life on Earth 600 million years ago is actually quite different than it is now. The dominant species at this stage was the trilobites and the nautiloids, which remind me of a huge data bundle and some prison gang. And they were soft body types, bug-like, but this was the early life forms on Earth. And yes, the first moment of extinction hit, and the Earth was nearly wiped clean of all life forms on Earth. But what nature does is it takes the strongest DNA, builds new strings, and eventually started the eras of where the fish were mostly the dominant species. And another moment of extinction hit 360 million years ago. So I'm not going to discuss how that moments of extinction worked. I just don't have enough knowledge for that. But what is interesting, what happened after that is the era where the amphibians were the dominant species. In other words, we're taking our first steps out of the water. But you guessed it, extinction hit again. And every time nature uses this moment to redesign or refine its design of the strongest DNA, biological DNA. The Triassic era came with reptiles. Only 50 million years later, what happened is a huge moment of extinction, and then the era of the dinosaurs came in, the Jurassic and the Cretaceous eras, and they were huge. Some of them were 45 meters in length, and they had really bad tempers. And approximately 65 million years ago, extinction hit again. And we're not sure what happened, meteorites, all sorts of stories taking place. So after some more refinement, the era of the mammals started, and things were really starting to take off for us. As a matter of fact, it is as if we are losing our fear of extinction. But to get closer to where we are, now this is where it's going to get interesting. I have to zoom in a bit. So let's go where we zoom into 18 million years ago. Why is this significant? Because the first primate on Earth walked here 18 million years ago, Proconsul africanus. And these images might look familiar to you. They've developed through to become Homo sapiens, and then afterwards Homo sapiens sapiens. I'm not sure when that actually happened. But if we want to come closer to where we actually are, we need to zoom in again. So just to give you an idea of scale, if you look at this picture and you impose this on the 600 million year line, this width does not even represent a molecule of the ink used to draw the line. So everything I'm going to talk about later is taking place in this section. Now, the whole story that I just told you was based on research, maybe Darwin, maybe whatever you want to call an evolutionary process. You don't have to believe in that. Today, I'm not going to go back and discuss detail of that because it's actually insignificant. If you look at the evolution of Homo sapiens sapiens, us, in other words, the acceleration in the tempo of the way that we live and the way that we deal with our nature and Earth, the influence on that, the acceleration is incredible. So we are actually experiencing accelerated evolution. Now suddenly evolution is not measured in millions of years anymore. Suddenly we start measuring evolution in year on year. And seeing that technology, information technology, really took off about 30 years ago, which enabled us to get information, or instant access to information, which enabled us to build better platforms to get better information faster, and it's a whole vicious circle eventually. On the event horizon, We have artificial intelligence. We've also heard a lot about that in the past few days. But I'm talking about glitchless artificial intelligence. And maybe this becomes the new dominant species, because what the computer of Dan Brown said is the new dominant species is already alive and well and will take over the world within 20 years. I think the book is already 10 years old, so we are running out of time. It could be artificial intelligence. Remember, we talk about this all the time. We talk around it. We wonder what artificial intelligence is going to do to our landscape. And for me as an architect, what is it going to do to my profession? And how valid will we still be? The other interesting thing is glitchless artificial intelligence means that they will, I'm going to refer to they and them as if they're the enemy. They are not. The important thing is that we can, at this stage, we only know we can coexist with AI, because as long as we write the algorithms, we should be okay, so it's a coexistence. But I'm afraid AI will start its own evolutionary process, and it has started already, and it will out-evolve us by far. The only problem is that with the next moment of extinction, and surely you didn't doubt that there will be another moment of extinction, AI will probably, it will be devastating for them, because they don't have biological DNA for nature to use to rebuild new DNA strings. And for us, well, we will probably survive, and there will probably be new DNA strings formed after that. And I really hope in the next era we get to be intelligent and we get to fly without aircraft. So this is quite interesting. The theory and development of computer systems able to perform tasks normally requiring human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, decision-making, and translation between languages. This is an early definition of artificial intelligence. And I can tell you all the apps appearing on the screen at the moment already conform or comply to the whole definition. So we mustn't think AI as a robot. It's AI as part of our lives. And all these apps and many others can do the tasks set out in an early definition of artificial intelligence. Now, who of you haven't been on at least one of these apps this morning, or one of many other similar apps already before you came here? It's an integral part of our lives. It's in our offices and at home and in the car, at the gym, and in our bedrooms. And it's already a coexistence, a codependency, actually, which is probably non-reversible. And I can't help but to see it as a sort of a voluntary, what is the word? We sort of give ourselves over to this voluntarily. Now, the human brain has the ability to adjust to its environment. The neuroscience calls it the plasticity of the brain. So it has already been proven that the mind, or the human mind, has already adapted in younger generations. Generations who don't know life without some form of technological or information technological input. So that is evolution taking place. That is measured in 30 years. It's not 30 million years. And which means it's not a good or a bad discussion anymore. It's just, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do with it? Because it is part of our system as it is. So now how the hell do we design a library of the future after getting all this information in? In a time where forecasters don't predict even further than 400 days at this stage, the answer, unfortunately, is not really clear. How do we design for a future? Traditional classic academic libraries were spaces where information was stored, mostly in book form or some form of printed media. And the librarian could help you to find the right book for your purpose. And because it was a quiet space, it also gave some opportunity for quiet studying. But that was not the main purpose of it. The purpose was to store information and exchange that information with you. So we cannot proceed on this path, obviously, because that will not be designing for the future. I just want to go back to that slide. The original library that we have to start designing on was 4,000 square meter. It's an existing library, and it's situated in the Tygerberg campus, the Tygerberg campus of Stellenbosch University, as I said earlier. And we had to, part of the brief was we had to demolish everything inside that we could lay our delicate hands on and redesign within these 4,000 square meters a library of the future. So, is it possible that in a few years' time that we could buy technology that can store all the information known to mankind on that device, whatever you want to call it, have it updated every minute by some super fast Sci-Fi, and maybe it can come in the form of an implant that can communicate directly with your brain, which means that you will have all the information immediately available. So what happens if that happens? It means it bypasses that part of your brain which converts information into knowledge. So can you imagine those discussions when we braai? Because we all have the same facts, there's nothing we can speak about. And what it'll actually just mean is we will become an interface device for AI, giving it a body to move around in. Should the library of the future be an energy-hungry physical space? I mean, do we still need to make space to exchange information just for the sake of exchanging information? Maybe it should be virtual. Maybe it must just be you and your interface device where you can get the information immediately. No HVAC, no electricity. Actually, our research showed that the contrary is true. For some other reason, we still want to get together to turn information into knowledge. So this is a very important point. The role of the librarian, so before we start thinking even about the students, the role of the librarian has also changed dramatically now, if you think of it this way, because with easy accessibility, instead of showing you the right book, they must show you the right search path to get to the right information. And librarians must now suddenly give lectures and training to 50 to 100 people to teach them to get the right information, which is probably an off-site database. Yes, we are getting rid of books, and that is, I think, we cannot get away from that. You can't get rid of all the books yet, and that is the one thing that we cannot predict. But we can reduce the amount of books in libraries, and we have to accept that. And I'm glad we went to UJ's library yesterday. There is already a movement, actually internationally, that is moving, that is reducing or weeding out old books. So we're sitting with this thing: must it be virtual or must it not be virtual? So there's one ingredient that is quite important, actually, that we must add to the mix. It seems like when we study together, collaborative studying is the biggest form, the most successful form of turning information into knowledge. It seems like in our natural strive to turn this information into knowledge, it binds us together in a way. It feels like it's a human stance against technology. So libraries of the foreseeable future must create the space for students to get together and, in a collaborative way, turn information into knowledge. And it's proven that students living in residences on campuses all over the world, they actually do better than students living off campus in private. And it has to do with student communities and exchanging ideas and thinking. So I'm going to go over now to the project. What did we take out of all of this? I think the idea is, when we started designing it, I must remember we did a lot of research and we actually still didn't know what we were doing. But what we thought was good is, instead of dividing a library up, we've reduced now the amount of books. We've had excellent cooperation with Stellenbosch University. And we thought, we heard yesterday the home from home scenario. So we must create platforms and space for students to work together. Remember, that is the noisy part. So you'll see the group sessions at the right with a high decibel level. And we believe that we must have a transition to studying single study spaces, which will be much more quiet, quiet reading, quiet studying. And we didn't want to divide it up by solid walls, but we believe that it must be a gradual transition from noisy to more quiet. Remember, we only had the 4,000 square meters that we could work with. So, collaborative spaces, single spaces, quiet spaces, and a transition. So, eventually, when we started demolishing everything, what was amazing, the building really showed its secrets to us. This library is in the middle of a building. So, when we started opening it up, you could see the building showing us its secrets. This is, for instance, one of two light exterior. It's an outside space, a courtyard. That's the word that I'm looking for. And which really brought light to the heart of this library, which it didn't have before. They were there, but it was enclosed. And purely for services, there you can also see the light shaft. These are not wagon wheels. It's air conditioning fans. The library wasn't that old. It was built in the 1970s. So what we had to do is re-look all the attributes that we have to work with, our design parameters, and obviously the main thing is to bring as much light into the library as possible. We also believe that as part of the brief, if we can combine the enclosed spaces, we will have sensible open spaces, consolidated open spaces as a result. And that is also the principle that we based our design on. This is what the eventual plan looked like, eventually. I'll run through it very briefly. The admin part had to be placed strategically. You're going to have staff there for 24 hours, and you can't have a full staff. And we had to place it in a way that it had overview over the library to function in a 24-hour scenario. It was always the idea from day one that we wanted to put in that open space a tree of knowledge, which posed a huge problem for us because a crane couldn't reach that area and it had to be carried up by hand. So we had to buy a small tree, but a big pot, so we hope that it will grow into the pot and eventually be a proper size. We decided on an Outeniqua yellowwood tree to symbolize the heritage of our country. And then part of the brief, there you see closed group, quiet group sessions for collaborative studying or meetings, etc. Digital classroom, also used for training by the librarians, and a research commons for senior students and researchers working at the facility. We also have a state-of-the-art video conferencing facility, which can have various setups like a classroom or pure meeting, video conferencing, etc. You will see, and then the consolidated open spaces that eventually was a result, and this was purely a result of combining your closed spaces. And on both sides of the tree of knowledge, it's open, it's walked through, so there are no doors closing it. So if you enter into this library, First of all, you must see the tree. That is why it's been placed strategically, and you must always be aware of this tree whenever you walk in this library. We particularly like the existing furniture. We were also awarded the interior of this project, and we actually managed to reuse 70% of the furniture and put it back into the space, obviously in a revived state, new materials, etc. Now, this is just brutally showing the technology that was present when we started off with this project. Now, you will wonder why I started at the 80s. I think this is from the early 80s, the technology. No, that was late 80s, because it's already VHS. This is what, it was still present and it was still working. So if you can imagine, if you just replace this now with the technology that we have, the huge jump and our fourth industrial evolution, the way that it's been treating us with this type of items. Now, this is the quiet study area that used to be in the library. This picture was taken on a normal day where the library was open, and you can see the amount of students walking around there. This is what it looks like now, after we have changed everything. So, and look again at the amount of students present. This is also taken normally in the middle of the day. On the right-hand side, you can see the courtyard and light penetrating into the space. There's, you see our tree that was carried up in a 250-liter bag. And once again, this is the main access that you have to walk past. Well, there's also one on the other side of this open space. And it's really a fantastic experience if you enter this library and you see this tree and light being present there. Looking back towards the entrance, also once again on the right-hand side, the open space. Now this used to be the computer area. We've obviously made some serious changes to that and designed a digital classroom. It looks like that now. So once again, just look at the amount of students, the difference between how it was and what it looks like now. Here we designed study booths where medical students can sit and with fairly high-end technology, we couldn't get away from it, to rotate biomedical models, etc. This is also where the librarians give their training to students to find the right search paths, etc., and how to use the system. And otherwise, it's just used as a normal computer area. A book-centered library, it has got its own charm, obviously, but because there were so many books taken out of the system, we also took the bookshelves and we revamped them, those that were left, and we also put them back, and we placed them far better to form part of the transition from noisy to quiet. And this is what they look like now. And it forms niches where people can sit and read quietly. So we are now in the, it also serves as a bit of a noise barrier to absorb noise. So people can also sit here on the more quiet side. The video conferencing facility to host inside, it's a fantastic space. This was designed in one of the two courtyards, so we put a very high roof on it and made sure that the natural light also comes in there. The research commons, once again for the senior students and researchers. Now the old reception, I specifically chose the pictures that pixelate so that the new pictures can look a lot better, the difference. So the reception changed from this to this, which obviously has a completely different look and feel. And it's at the entrance, so it's quite prominent, and it leads down the long axis to lead people into the library. The bookshelves in the front area of the library, we've kept them low to make sure that the librarians have proper oversight an overview over the library. At the entrance, we created a space where there can be informal exhibitions. If it's not used for that, the students can use the spy pavilion at the back. It's got a nice view over the library, and you can see who's there and who's not there. And all the furniture has services in them for charging devices. We also do daylight harvesting, so you can imagine the advantage that this light shaft has, this courtyard has on the electricity usage. So in conclusion, we must realize that information and technology it's not the end, it's a means to an end. And it cannot be the thing that cannot be the differentiator of a good and a bad university. Surely we cannot allow, if a university doesn't have the financial resources to acquire and maintain the latest technology, surely we cannot regard that as a bad university. Knowledge is the end. Knowledge is the end. And that should be the differentiator between a good and a bad university. So we shouldn't ask, how much new technology have you bought in the fourth industrial revolution for your university? If you don't have the money, you must ask yourself, what did you do to create platforms and spaces so that your students can turn their information into knowledge? And that is what we must design for. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.